Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today we are going to solve the math number 2 from your textbook. As this math is covered from the according to the textbook of class 10, and mostly it is from national curriculum based. So if you go to your chapter number 2, which is named transactions, from the chapter, according to your sequence, this math is going to be covered from here, and the math number is 2. What we have been told to do, first of all, we have to focus on our requirements, right? First requirement is calculate the total amount of those events which are not transactions. This is our first requirement that we need to solve. And what is our second requirement? Explain the reason of Choyan brothers under equation method. Then our last one is show effect of the transactions of Choyan brothers on accounting equation. What types of marks distribution will be seen in the exam hall? You can see there are two. The first one will be given for 2 marks. This one is for 2 marks, and these two will be given for individually 4 marks. Here in total you can see 10 marks. Okay, to do our first requirement we have to again remember some of the basic things. Calculate the total amount of those events which are not transactions. To be a transaction, there must have two characteristics. That means these two conditions must be filled up. What are these transaction characteristics? You can see. If it's a transactions, these two characteristics obviously would be seen in this event. What are the minimum two parties? There must have minimum two parties. And what is our second requirement? Changing the financial condition of the business, not owner, not anyone. We should always focus on the side of the business. Whenever we see the changing the financial condition of the business, only in that case we can recognize it as a transaction. You can see we have to follow in the took place in the Choyan brothers. Imagine that Choyan brothers is my organization. You have to always focus on the changing of the financial condition of the Choyan brothers. That means my cash situation. You should, while doing this math, you should consider yourself. It's your own math. It's your own company. If you receive anything, that should be yours. If you pay anything, that should be your cost. Consider this way. So first of all, we have to figure out is it a transaction or not. By following these characteristics, we try to figure out what is our transaction and which one is not. You can see capital brought in business. If owner brings it into the business, that should be considered as a capital. What my business is receiving, you can see cash amount. So that indicates the increment of cash. So that means change in the financial condition of the business. So it's a transaction. Is it clear, sir? Now, a manager appointed with Taka 18,000. Try to get this one. A manager appointed. He hasn't been paid. Here even doesn't mention that the amount monthly salary of the manager has been paid Taka 18,000. Is there given anything? No. What we have been told? We have been told that only a manager appointed. Appointed. We have just recruited someone and tell him that after this month he will be given 18,000, because to begin with any job, no owner will pay any single amount of money. Is it clear, sir? Whenever he would service for this business, only that he will be paid. So we have just appointed the manager. We haven't paid him any single amount of money. So it's not a transaction, right? First of all, we need to write this one. A manager appointed. You can see here appointed. To do this math, you have to make a format. It's a basic math. As we are doing the second times, you can see these are same requirements in the previous math, like math number 1 of your textbook. Now, first of all, you have to give a title, calculating the total amount of those events which are not transaction. Then you need to write down some keynotes. Capital brought in business, not a manager appointed. What is this amount? 18,000. 18,000 should be recorded here, because according to the requirement, we have to figure out the total amount of those events. Amount. That's why 18,000. However, our second option, sold goods on credit. Sold goods on credit. You can see on credit, on account, and outstanding. These three words are similar. These three words are similar. That means we haven't received anything. We have sold our goods. That indicates the reduction of my goods from my business on the side. You can see that indicates the changing of the financial condition of the business, though we haven't received anything. But according to the context, we are going to get it within short time. So it's a transaction. A stationary purchased in cash taka 2200, that indicates the reduction of cash. So it's a transaction. Then the owner paid his son's tuition fees. Try to get this one. The owner paid his son's tuition fees taka 2000 personally. If owner pays anything for his personal purpose, it won't be included in the business because it is not my business matters. We haven't paid anything because of this payment. There is no changes of the financial condition of the business because here even doesn't mean that the owner paid his son's tuition fees from the business. Is there mentioned anything from the business? No. That means there is no relation with these transactions. So it's a personal purpose of the owner. So it's not a transaction because to be a transaction, there must have two conditions. Because of this transaction, there is no increased or decreased amount of cash noticed in my business and others issue also. So it's not a transaction. What I have to write down here, the owner paid his son's tuition fee. What is the amount here? 2000, right? So what is our total amount? Total amount is 20,000, sir. Is it clear? Our first requirement is done. We have solved it. Is it clear? Now we have to solve our requirement number 2. What we have been told, explain the reason of Choyan brothers under equation method. Is it clear, sir? What do you mean by equation method? What do you mean by equation method? You can see here A equal to L plus E or OE, both are similar. That's the equation. We have to show here the changes of this equation. Asset increased or decreased. Liability and equity increased or decreased. That's what we have been told. Explaining reason under equation method. But before that, we have to identify is it a transaction or not. What do you mean by equity? You can see there are four elements of equity we can see here. What are they? Capital plus revenue minus drawing minus expense. These four elements. We need to be used after a little while. Just wait till then. Try to get this one. What is our first January? January 1st. Capital brought in business. If owners brings anything to the business, that should be recognized as capital. But on the other hand, what my business is receiving because of bringing this capital, my business is receiving cash. That means that indicates the increment of the asset. Cash is a element of the current asset, right? So cash account debit. However, what is brought by the owner, that is recognized as capital. Capital account credit. You can see cash indicates the increment of the asset. How about capital? You can see whenever capital is brought by the owner, that indicates the increment of the equity. You can see plus. Here plus means increases. On the other hand, minus means decreases. The more revenue will be generated by my business, that indicates the increment of the equity. On the other hand, the more drawings and expenses will be happen to the business, that indicates the reduction of the equity. So because of bringing capital to the business, that indicates the increment of the equity. Is it clear, sir? So first of all, we have to write down here, it's a transaction. It's a transaction. So what are the elements or what are the changes we can see of this equation? Asset increase. How about my capital? Because of bringing capital, you can see that indicates the increment of the equity. Capital, equity increased. That means here both asset and equity increased. Here both asset and equity increased. Is it okay, sir? Our first requirement is done. However, our second January 2 is not a transaction, that's why it won't be included here. Now move to our January 7. Sold goods on credit. What I have said here, on credit, on account, outstanding. Both are similar. That means I have already I have already sold my goods. But however, others element, selling goods always indicates the increment of the income. That's why if income, liability and equity increases, that should be recognized as credit. Now, what would be the debit side? Have I received any cash? No. The person who is going to, or the organization who is going to me, is my accounts receivable or debtor. Account receivable or debtor. You can write down any name here. This is a synonymous word, receivable debit. You can see receivable is the element of the asset, current asset. So that indicates the increment of the asset. How about sales? You can see the more goods the more goods will be sold by the business, that indicates the increment of the equity. How? The more you sell goods, the more income will be generated by the business. You can say mostly if my business is a service based business, they will provide services. That means by providing services, they will generate their income. On the other hand, if it is a manufacturing based company, what it should be? They would sell their own goods. By selling goods, they will generate their income. That's why you can see sales is a part of the income. Who will, in short, if I say, who will, who will take the benefits of income? Obviously, owner. The more capital and revenue would be generated by the business, the more equity would be increased. So here, equity increased. You can see in these transactions also same. Account receivable is an asset here. Asset increased. On the other hand, sales is the element of the equity. That means it indicates the increment of the equity. So January 7 is also a transaction. Here, both what you can see receivable is asset and equity. Asset and equity increased. Increase. Is it okay, sir? Now we have to focus on which number? January 10. What have been told? Read out the question, please. Try to get what would be the answer, or what are the changes you can see in this equation. Before writing anything, try to assume the answer. Try to assume the answer, please. You can see. Okay. Stationery purchased in cash taka 2,200. Stationery. What are they? Pen, pencil, eraser, all of this including. So in an organization, it is recognized stationery is a expenses. Right. So what is the would be journal here? You can see here stationery account debit. Stationery account debit. Because we know that if asset and expenses increases, that indicates the debit. On the other hand, if asset and expenses decreases, it should be credit. You can see stationery is the element of the asset. How about my cash? As this transaction is happened based on cash, so that indicates the reduction of my cash account credit. So cash, whenever cash is credit, that indicates the reduction of the asset, because as we know that if assets and expenses increased, only that it would be debit. So here asset is a credit, that means that indicates the reduction of the asset. How about expenses? You can see here drawing and expenses. Whenever expenses is happening to the business, that indicates the reduction of the equity. Here you can see equity is also reduced. So January 10 is a transaction. It's a transaction. Okay, sir. So what are the effects? We can see equity and asset both decreased. Here, both asset and equity decreased. Is it clear, sir? Because stationery is element of the expense. So expense is the element of the equity. Whenever drawing and expenses is happening to the business, that indicates the reduction of the equity. On the other hand, whenever capital is brought by the owner and the business is generating its revenue, that indicates the increment of the equity. I think you all get it. Is it okay, sir? If it is down, then move to our next requirement. It's not transaction, it won't be included here. January 10 is done. Okay, sir, registration processed. So 12 number won't be included here because it's not a transaction. So what is our next? January 20. You can see here Receive টাকা 30,000 from Shumona Traders. From Shumona Traders. Okay, fine. That means as I receive from anything, what my business is receiving? Cash. Cash account, debit. You can see here because that indicates the increment of my cash. So the more asset and expenses will be increased to the business, that should be recognized as debit. That means here asset increased. Who has paid to me? Shumona. The person who is giving money to me, obviously he is my receivable. He is my receivable. But the person to whom I have to pay is my accounts payable. Mostly, if I say in short, account receivable is origin mostly from sales on account. That means there is a close relationship between sales and accounts receivable. On the other hand, if I say about purchase on account, so because of purchasing any goods on account, there generates other account name which is recognized as creditor or accounts payable. That means accounts payable or creditor mostly origin from purchase on account. In short, there is a close relationship between purchase and accounts payable, sales and accounts receivable. Try to get this one. So here, cash account has increased. The person who is giving to me, that means he is my accounts receivable. Who is my account receivable here? Shumana Terrace. That means debtor. CI account receivable, VAVL. Okay, fine. Credit. You can see the one side here. Asset increased. On the account receivable is also element of the asset. On the other hand, my asset also decreased. So January 20 is a transaction. Is a transaction here. Here asset increased and asset decreased. Asset increased and how about asset? My another asset also decreased. Is it okay, sir? Then this is our last number. What we have been told, try to figure out this one, please. What would be debit and what would be credit? First of all, try to get this one. And secondly, what changes you can see in this element? Pay taka 1,500 for advertisement. That indicates the reduction of cash because advertisement is an expenses. It's a transaction, first of all. It's a transaction. So advertisement is an expense. So you can see here advertisement expense, debit. How about my cash? Because of this payment, that indicates the reduction of my cash. So cash account, credit. Is it okay, sir? You can see advertisement is an expenses. So what are the elements of the expenses? The elements of expenses mostly seen in the equity. So that indicates the reduction of the equity. Here you can see reduction of the equity. On the other hand, how was cash? Whenever any asset in the credit position, that indicates the decrement of the asset. Is it clear, sir? That means here both asset and equity decrease similar to the January 7. Here both asset and equity decreased. Is it clear, sir? Again, I am saying here advertisement is an expenses. So expense is the element of the equity. Whenever expense is happening to the business, that indicates the reduction of equity. That's why equity decreased. On the other hand, because of this payment, that indicates the reduction of my cash. That means cash is the element of the asset. That's why asset also decreased. Now I think our second requirement is also done. Is it okay, sir? Now we have to solve our third requirement. Show effect of the transaction of Chowan brothers on accounting equation is also synonymous to, if you have been told like that, prove that or prove that A equal to L plus C or OE. Same. You have to make a tabular format. Figure out. You have to figure out also the what are the elements of the assets, what are the elements of the liability. Then make a table like this. So, according to our requirement, we should move to our third requirement. Is it okay, sir? Okay. First of all, before doing this math, we have to figure out what are the assets and how many assets I have to include here, because we have to write down and prove that assets equal to liability plus equity. Here you can see capital brought, that means cash. Cash is an asset. Another appointed is not a transaction. Sold goods on credit. Whenever sold goods on credit, there will be arrived another asset name account receivable or debtor. Account receivable or debtor, both are similar. Or debtor, any one you can write down here. As to here processing cash, cash already included. tuition fees, it won't be included, receipt cash, account receivable, advertisement. That means there are two assets we have found here. But finding out our total assets, we have to write down our liability. How many? We have to figure out at the same procedure. So focus on. But before doing this math, again I am saying, before doing this math, you have to note down something on the side of the equity. Please don't make any mistakes. According to my experience, most of the students easily forget what would be included here. You can see here equity are the elements of the capital plus revenue minus drawing and minus expenses. Four of the elements would be included here. So whenever capital and revenue would be brought to the business, or revenue would be happen to the business, that indicates the increment of the equity. That means you have to add all this figure. How about drawing and expenses? That indicates the reduction of the equity. That means you have to deduct from the total amount of equity. What is our first transaction is here? Capital brought in business taka 75,000. 75,000 cash. That indicates the increment of the cash, because whatever is brought by the owner, that is recognized as capital. How about the capital? Capital indicates the plus figure. That means it indicates the increment of the equity. On the other hand, whenever owner is brought anything, that should be recognized as capital. What my business is receiving? Cash amount. That means my cash amount of the business is increased. That's why I have to place it on the side of the cash. Now the first one is done. But before doing this math, I'm going to show you basic techniques how you can easily identify that you are doing this math and it's a right way in a balancing method. What is the balancing method? Whatever the balance should be placed in the second line, you have to put in on the below. It's also same. You can see here before equal, what is your asset amount? 75,000, and after equal, what is your amount? 75,000. That means from the both side, my account is equal. That means my math is okay. I'm doing this math in the right way. However, January 7 is not a transaction, that's why it shouldn't be included here. Sold goods on credit. Sold goods on credit. You can see. I have already sold goods, but I haven't received anything. The person who is going to pay me is my debtors. What is my debtor amount? 50,000. And selling. Selling is the element of the revenue. The more I will sell goods from my business, the more income would be generated by my business. You can see it's a plus sign. Plus sign means indicating the increment of the equity. So increment means you have to add with equity amount. What is my total amount here? 1,25,000 taka. Here you can see 75,000 plus 50,000. How I have written here, you have to focus on. You can see whenever I have written the balance here, I didn't write down anything. The date is given after the balance line. You have to maintain the same sequence. Don't put down in the top of this 50,000. That would be indicate the balance, because some cases you can say they are most some of the students will make a column here to write down only balance. But if you do this math in this way, it's not mandatory to make any additional column. That's why, to save your time, I'm showing it to you. You can do it in this way. Now try to balance all of them. What is our total amount here? 1,25,000 taka, and after equal there is amount also 1,25,000 taka. That means all are equal. What is the right hand? Stationery purchased in cash. Okay, stationery is element of the expenses. How does it imply? It implies the reduction of equity. What is my amount here? 2,200. Whenever you deduct anything, please use bracket, as you don't forget is it a plus or minus. Most of the students unfortunately don't use this sign. In that cases, there is a high probability to be wrong, because in the absence minds, instead of deducting this amount, they can add it. So to avoid this risk, we have to always use bracket mark. How about my another one? You can see cash taka. Cash indicates the reduction of cash. What is the amount? 2,200. Now deduct all of that. What is our amount here, sir? 75,000 minus 2,200. 72,800. Here 50,000 plus 50,000. What is our amount here? 1,22,800. Now deduct this one. 1,25,000 minus 2,200. 2,200. Same amount. 1,22,800. Again, I'm saying, what is my total balance on the asset side? If you add all of these, you will get the same amount, 1,22,800 taka. If it is okay, then move to the another one. Receive taka 30,000 from Shumona traders. Because of getting this money, how about my cash? That indicates the increased amount of my cash. So increased means I have to add with the main figure. And how about Shumona? The person who is going to pay me, is or she is my debtor. It might be any institution, might be any persons. So that indicates the reduction of the receivable. Previously, my receivable amount was 50,000, but somehow, as he or she or this institution has paid me 30,000, that indicates the reduction of debtors. Is it okay, sir? So what is the left amount here? 20,000, and we have to deduct this amount, 72,800 minus, sorry, as indicates the increment of the cash. Okay, sir, I have to add with that. See, there is a risk. Unfortunately, there might be happened anything. 1,02,800. Whenever the confusion arises, it would be added or subtracted at the time. I have only focused on, is there any bracket mark or not. Whenever I didn't see that any bracket mark, I'm sure that I have to add this amount. That's why when I was deducting this amount from the equity, I have used this bracket mark that indicates the reduction or minus that you need to do. Is it okay, sir? So what is amount here? You can see if you add all of them, 1,22,800. Here also same amount, 1,22,800 till the January 25, 22. My balance is okay. This is our last. Paid taka 1,500 for advertisement. Advertisement is an income or expenses. Advertisement, salary, utility bill, electric bill, house rent, all of them are the elements of expenses. So expenses indicates the reduction of equity. So reduction means I have to use also bracket mark. I have to deduct this amount. What is my amount here? 1,500. How about my cash? My cash also decreases. How? Because of this payment. Previously, my cash was 1,02,800. Because of this payment, my cash also reduces. So I have to deduct this amount, 1,02,800 minus 1,500. What is my amount here? 1,01,300. This is the 20,000, and 1,22,800 minus 1,500. 1,21,300. That means here what is our total amount? 1,21,300. Now add all of them. 20,000, 1,300. That means 1,21,300. Is it okay, sir? Whenever you see your assets equal to liability and equity, liability plus equity, that means your math is okay. There's a balance. If you find that all of them are equal, that means, sir, your math is okay. This is one of the easiest math, I think so. So, sir, I think inshallah there is no problem in this math. And thank you so much for today's class.